All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we are going to unpack something that's super important for any UPSC aspirant
Absolutely.
birthright citizenship in the U.S.
Yeah.
Now, you'll find this topic
Yeah.
coming up in mains, in prelims.
Yeah.
It kind of weaves its way through international relations, polity, and even current affairs.
It does. It does.
And it's particularly relevant
Oh, very much so.
right now with all the developments and controversies surrounding it.
Absolutely. And that's why we're
Exactly.
fully
For this deep dive,
Yeah.
we are basing our discussion on a really fascinating article from The Hindu
It's a good one.
that really digs into the intricacies of this issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say it's a bit of a legal and political puzzle?
Absolutely. It really is. It boils down to this seemingly simple question, can a country just like change the rules of citizenship?
Yeah.
And that's what's causing all this uproar. So
Yeah.
it's a big one.
Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Sure.
What exactly is birthright citizenship? I remember struggling with this concept during my UPSC prep.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think of it this way. It's basically the idea that you automatically become a citizen of a country just because you were born there.
Okay.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Simple as that.
Simple. And in the U.S., it exists in two forms. You have jus soli, which means right of the soil, where your birthplace determines your citizenship. And then you have jus sanguinis, meaning right of blood, where citizenship is inherited from your parents, even if you're born somewhere else.
I see.
So those are terms you'll definitely want to remember for your exams.
Right. And for my polity prep, I remember in the U.S., the 14th Amendment is like the big legal backbone of birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
Added to the Constitution way back in 1868, just after the Civil War.
That's right.
Is that right?
That is correct. And the historical context here is really crucial, especially for those of you tackling the history portions of the UPSC syllabus.
Right.
The 14th Amendment, it was specifically designed to address the aftermath of slavery. So ensuring that formerly enslaved people born in the U.S. were recognized as citizens, and it boldly declares that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Here's where things get a little messy and where the recent controversy comes in.
Yeah.
This is where we talk about President Trump's executive order that aimed to end birthright citizenship for children of parents who are in the country without legal status.
Precisely. And for the UPSC, you'll want to pay close attention to how this executive order targeted two categories of individuals.
Okay.
The first being those born to parents who were unlawfully present in the U.S. at the time of the child's birth.
Okay.
And the second, those born to parents who are legally in the U.S. but only temporarily.
I see.
Like those on certain visas or participating in travel programs.
So the argument was that these children aren't truly subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. and therefore shouldn't be granted automatic citizenship.
Precisely, and that's a big sticking point.
But that interpretation of the 14th Amendment is sparking a lot of debate, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, wouldn't changing something as fundamental as birthright citizenship require more than just an executive order?
Right.
Like, I mean, that seems like a topic ripe for an essay question on the limits of executive power.
You are hitting on some key points there. You see, opponents of the order argue that it's twisting the traditional understanding of the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
They believe that abolishing or even restricting birthright citizenship would actually require a constitutional amendment.
Wow.
Which is a much more
involved,
complicated and lengthy process.
So a constitutional amendment would require, what is it, a 2/3 majority vote?
You got it.
In both the House of Representatives and the Senate?
That's right.
And then it needs approval from 3/4 of the U.S. states.
Exactly. That's a pretty high bar to clear.
Pretty high bar.
Yeah, it is. And the current political landscape adds another layer of complexity here. And this whole situation really showcases the delicate balance of power between the different branches of government, which is something you'll encounter often in your UPSC studies.
Right. And this is where things get especially interesting for our Indian listeners.
Oh, very much so.
Especially those thinking about working or studying in the U.S.
Right.
This executive order, even though it is facing legal challenges, it could still have a big impact on the Indian diaspora.
It's true. Imagine the ripple effects on Indian professionals holding H-1B visas.
Right.
Those waiting for green cards, and even Indian students.
Wow.
Their U.S.-born children could potentially lose their automatic citizenship.
Wow.
Creating immense uncertainty for families, and possibly even discouraging them from choosing the U.S. as a destination.
Yeah.
I mean, the potential social and economic ramifications are vast.
And we can't forget about the potential impact on India-U.S. relations, which is always a hot topic in international relations discussions.
Absolutely. I mean, this entire situation really is a prime example of how domestic policies in one country can have significant international implications.
Yeah.
It's something to keep in mind as you analyze global events for your UPSC exams.
Definitely.
For sure.
Okay, so
Yeah. This whole debate about birthright citizenship, it's like, a microcosm of larger global trends.
I think so.
We are seeing these discussions in other countries, too, about, who belongs and how citizenship is defined.
Yeah, like a real-world case study almost.
Right.
In these complexities of global migration and national identity.
Absolutely.
Something UPSC aspirants often have to grapple with.
Precisely. And from a legal perspective, the challenges to President Trump's executive order are really fascinating.
Absolutely.
It really puts the 14th Amendment under the microscope.
Yeah. And the main argument against the order is that it directly contradicts the 14th Amendment.
Right.
Which, as we discussed, guarantees citizenship to anyone born in the U.S. and subject to its jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Opponents argue that the amendment just doesn't make any exceptions for the children of undocumented immigrants.
You're right, and this isn't just some, academic debate happening in law journals.
Right.
Several immigrant and civil rights groups, including the American Civil Liberties Union,
Oh, wow.
have actually filed lawsuits challenging the executive order's legality.
So it's not just about the legal technicalities.
Right.
It's about real people's lives being affected.
Exactly.
This is something UPSC aspirants should keep in mind when they're analyzing these policy decisions.
Yeah.
The human impact is always crucial.
Absolutely. The lawsuits argue that the executive order oversteps the president's authority and violates the Constitution. So it's a classic separation of powers issue.
Okay.
Something that you'll find discussed extensively in your UPSC polity materials.
Now, this legal battle has the potential to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. It certainly could. And if it does, the Supreme Court's decision could, reshape our understanding of birthright citizenship in the U.S.
Wow.
I mean, the implications would be huge, not just for the U.S., but also potentially for other countries.
Oh, wow.
Grappling with similar questions about citizenship and migration.
Okay.
This is, a landmark case in the making and something you might want to keep an eye on for your current affairs preparation.
So this brings us back to the heart of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Can a country really change the rules of citizenship, especially when those rules are deeply ingrained in its constitution?
Right.
What would you say to a UPSC aspirant who's trying to, make sense of this complex issue?
I would say, it's crucial to understand that the U.S. system, with its written constitution and judicial review, it makes changing fundamental rights quite difficult.
Okay.
To abolish birthright citizenship, like this executive order attempted to do, would likely require a constitutional amendment.
Right. And as we mentioned earlier, that's a very high bar to clear.
It is.
You need that supermajority vote in both houses of Congress.
Yeah.
And then ratification by 3/4 of the states.
That's a lot.
Achieving that kind of consensus across the country, especially in today's, polarized climate, is a monumental task.
It is, and it highlights another important point for UPSC aspirants.
Yeah.
Understanding the interplay between legal principles, political realities, and social dynamics, that's key to analyzing any complex issue, be it domestic or international.
So where does all of this leave us? Is birthright citizenship in the U.S. hanging by a thread?
Not quite. While the executive order, it generated a lot of controversy, a lot of legal challenges. It's important to remember that the 14th Amendment, it remains the law of the land.
Right.
And any attempt to change that, it's likely going to face a long and arduous legal and political battle.
So it's a dynamic situation.
Hell, it is.
For sure. We'll have to see how these legal battles play out, whether this issue ultimately lands before the Supreme Court. For our listeners prepping for the UPSC, this is a perfect example of how history, law, and politics all intersect in these fascinating and often unpredictable ways.
It's true, and it underscores the need for aspiring civil servants to not just know the letter of the law, but also to understand its historical context, its interpretation by the judiciary, and its impact on people's lives. These are the skills that the UPSC exams are designed to test.
Now, the U.S. isn't the only country wrestling with these questions about birthright citizenship.
It's not.
It's a global debate.
It is.
So let's shift our focus a bit to how other countries approach this concept.
Okay.
Now, this is particularly relevant for the international relations segment of your UPSC syllabus.
Absolutely.
You know, it is fascinating how this whole thing about birthright citizenship isn't just playing out in the U.S., it's like a global conversation.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. I remember coming across like different approaches to citizenship
Yeah.
when I was studying for the international relations paper at UPSC. It's true.
I mean, the world is incredibly diverse
Yeah.
in how it defines and grants citizenship.
Yeah.
And for UPSC aspirants, it's really important to understand these variations as it often reflects a country's history, social structure, even their current political climate.
Right. So let's zoom out a bit and look at how other countries are approaching this birthright citizenship thing.
Okay, sounds good.
What are some of the key models out there?
Well, a lot of countries, especially in the Americas, follow the principle of jus soli,
Right.
which we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
They grant citizenship to anyone born on their soil, regardless of the parent's nationality.
Okay.
And this approach is rooted in historical factors, including periods of colonization and the desire to attract immigrants and build up their populations.
That makes sense, but I'm guessing not every country follows this model.
Right. A lot of other countries, especially in Europe and Asia, they lean more towards just sanguinis,
Okay.
citizenship by descent. So your citizenship is mainly determined by the nationality of your parents, even if you're born in a different country.
I see.
And this often reflects, a stronger emphasis on lineage and national identity.
Right. It seems like there are pros and cons to both approaches.
Yeah.
Jus soli can be seen as more inclusive, welcoming newcomers and their children as full members of society.
Yeah.
But doesn't it also open the door for what's often called birth tourism?
Mm-hmm.
People might specifically travel to a country just to give birth so their child can gain citizenship.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And it's a debate that a lot of countries with jus soli provisions are grappling with.
Right.
On the other hand, jus sanguinis can help preserve a sense of cultural continuity and national identity.
Yeah.
But it can also be more exclusionary.
Right.
Think about someone who's born and raised in a country but doesn't have the right ancestry.
Right.
May not be granted citizenship under this model.
That's quite a dilemma.
It is.
It's interesting to see how different countries weigh these various factors, and they choose the approach that best aligns with their own values and circumstances.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
Each country has to find its own balance, considering its history, social fabric, and future aspirations.
So back to the U.S. for a moment. What are the potential global implications if the U.S. were to significantly restrict or even abolish birthright citizenship?
Mm-hmm.
Could it set a precedent for other countries?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's certainly possible.
Right.
The U.S. has long been viewed as a champion of immigration and individual rights.
Mm.
And if it were to shift away from birthright citizenship, other countries, especially those facing, similar pressures related to migration,
Right.
might feel emboldened to follow suit.
Right, and that could lead to a more, restrictive global environment for migration.
Yeah,
With consequences for families, economies, and even international relations.
absolutely.
Like a butterfly effect, almost.
It is. A change in one country's policy can have ripple effects across the globe.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the historical roots of birthright citizenship
Yeah.
to the legal battles in the U.S. and the diverse approaches adopted by countries worldwide.
That's been a journey.
What's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with from all of this?
I think the most important thing to remember is that citizenship is more than just a legal status. It's a really complex concept intertwined with history, social values, and individual rights.
Right.
And as aspiring civil servants preparing for the UPSC, you need to be able to analyze these complexities,
Yeah.
understand the different arguments, and see the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And for our UPSC aspirants, I would add that this entire debate around birthright citizenship is a perfect example of how seemingly domestic issues can have international ramifications.
Very true.
It highlights the importance of staying informed about global events
Yeah.
and understanding how they connect to India's own interests and policies.
Here's a final thought-provoking question for you to ponder as you continue your UPSC journey.
Okay.
As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, how should we rethink our concepts of citizenship and belonging in this 21st century?
Wow.
It's a question that will continue to challenge policymakers and citizens alike for years to come.
Excellent point to leave our listeners with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the intricate world of birthright citizenship. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, leave a like if you found this episode insightful, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to challenge and inspire you.